imagine being a 15-year-old kid who had a fling with your teacher. And she was all kinds of attractive, so attractive, in fact, that you're blinded by the ideal that you may spend more time with that person. If only you didn't have to do the one thing that you would do that put you in prison from 1990 something till 2015. Because little did this young man, who I will not say his name, and the other accomplices, okay? Little did this young man know, or at least he knew but did not understand the consequences of being so blinded by beauty, being so infatuated with someone who was a few years older than himself, intelligent, bright, a great dresser, looked like the girl next door, would manipulate him into unaliving her husband. When I was a kid, I was too young to be watching this, but old enough to understand, because I was under 13 years old when this happened and when this verdict came out in the 1990s. This was one of those shocking and horrifying things that was all over the news, because it wasn't common back then for a young man to fool around with his teacher, much less at her bidding and her behest take her husband out, for this said person to then just sit around, get in that courtroom and tell lies and say, oh, I never told him to do that. Flashback to now. 2 years prior, in 2022, she's finally ready to take responsibility for her actions, got ordained as a minister. Of course, that's the thing. Everybody waits to get locked up after doing something crazy to then find Jesus. And look, I'm not trying to mock, I'm just saying the young man now who got out in 2015, when I was a little girl, as sick as this is, I had hoped in my heart that he would not spend the rest of his life in prison, because I would sneak and watch that trial, and every bit of me felt, even as a little girl, and I wasn't supposed to be watching, but every bit of me felt he was manipulated. The prime of this young man's life was spent in prison. He got out in 2015. This young man went to prison when there was no World Wide Web, and came out to a world that's now going into artificial intelligence. I hope he's able to at least get a trade, because the trades are the future, and to not let that void rule his life. See, Pamela Smart scared me. When I was a little girl, I would sit there and look at her, and she's sitting and acting pensive. You know how you know something innately is wrong with somebody, but you can't figure that thing out? Because this was all over the national news. So some of y'all who are watching will be old enough to remember this. If not, go look it up. I'm not going to name any of the kids that were implicated, because there were 3 more guys from the high school, and they're all out of prison. When I sat there and looked at Pamela Smart as a little girl, I sat there and thought, this woman has a monster inside of her, but she's so pensive and trying to be soft-spoken and well-kempt, that unless you were good at psychology and psychiatry, you wouldn't understand and be able to draw out that monster inside. Prior to that hearing in 2022, this woman would not take responsibility, despite the fact that evidence pointed to the fact that she manipulated this young man to commit this crime. I'm not I'm not saying this to be judgmental, and I stick by the way I felt as a little girl and the way I feel now that that young man is outliving his life. I can't say for him whether this is his best life or his worst, because a lot has been taken from him and he had a lot of time to make up for with freedom. Obviously, he shot a man and he was old enough to know better, so he had to go to prison, but I think he was manipulated. The issue I have now is past this person, Pamela Smart. Many women are getting bold and comfortable with manipulating these young boys at school. And it feels to me like something drastic has to happen before someone says something, despite the fact that other students, because these kids talk amongst each other, will see things and won't say anything when it's a female that does it to a male. Now, if it's a male student doing it to a female, oh, we know. And let's not pretend like that there is no difference in the two, because it is. And this young man who's out right now, finally free, if you can call his freedom free, may take years to heal from those scars. Because taking a life unjustly has its consequences. But when you're that young and impressionable and you are manipulated, most of the time you never stood a chance.